Okay, raising your game part four. Let's recap a little bit on what we've covered up in the first three parts, up to the first three parts. We talked about aspiration levels. We talked about how aspiration levels can change. And we advocated for the idea of a growth mindset. Okay, this idea that you can, once you've moved away from the concept of fixed potential and fixed abilities, you realize that you can actually grow. And I used an example from my own past where I showed you my absolutely atrocious high school results, and yet still went on to complete higher education to the terminal level, to the level of a terminal degree. So we also know that social forces can shape us in ways that we can't control. There are things that are part of our social upbringing that simply can't be wished away, and there are things that we can simply not get around. And that's not to that may sound like it's contradicting the growth mindset, but we have to be realistic as well. Nonetheless, for this particular lesson, I want to focus in on the idea of one practical way that you can change your mindset a little bit, particularly when it comes to the academic work that you will encounter as an undergraduate student. Your exams, your term papers, your written assignments, etc. All of those things, and things like presentations as well, which can be daunting for young people going into university level. And the change I want to sort of advocate for in this video is a very simple one. You need to see your learning as an acquisition or the acquiring of skills. Your training. Learning to do this is training. Um, I'm pretty sure that you will encounter a whole range of subjects, both in high school and beyond, and you think, well, how is this going to be useful to me? What is learning poetry, for example, as you've probably done in high school at least, uh, analyzing poetry or short stories or things like that? How does that help me in a tangible way in my future life? Now, you may be interested in poetry or literature or whatever, and that may be a direction that you want to go in. You like working with words and all the rest of it, but how does it help you if you're not particularly interested in that kind of thing? And you have to see all of the encounters that you have in your high school and university learning with content, with subject matter, as training grounds for you to develop your thinking skills. Okay, that's what I want to focus in on in this lesson today. Be someone who wants to learn how to learn. The content is less important, believe it or not, than your ability to engage with material, your ability to engage and manipulate uh, intellectual material of any kind. So, how do you raise your game in that way? And we talked more broadly in part one in particular about the idea of a worldview. Well, this is part of the change of your worldview. It's about adopting a different attitude towards what you're learning. Don't see it as an end in itself. See it as a means to an end, an opportunity for you to train yourself in engaging with complex material. Because when you go into the world of work, believe me, doesn't matter what world of work it is, you are going to encounter material that you have to reckon with, that you're going to be thrown a lot of information and you're going to have to do something with it. And in many ways, when you get an opportunity, and it is a valuable opportunity to go for a university degree, an undergraduate degree, or beyond that if you can, you must see it as an opportunity to test yourself in the management of information. Okay? So how do you do that when you and I'm assuming that when you choose a particular subject area for your degree, that you are to some extent interested in it. Doesn't matter whether it's a STEM subject, a human sciences subject, or whatever, or business or whatever. You are at least interested in it to some extent, even though you're primarily using it to acquire a higher education degree so that you can go on and do a professional career. Great, do that. But use your time there to train your mind. So immerse yourself in your substantial topics. If you're working if you're going through a business degree or a management degree or any degree, you must start to immerse yourself in the topic. Start reading around it. Start reading beyond the assigned materials that you get. Look out into the web, into the internet, and start looking and encountering things that you can add in. The more knowledgeable you become about your content, about your knowledge beyond the confines of your assigned readings, the more competently you can manage the information. Okay? Uh, Start asking some different questions about these things. Okay, that's the other thing. Start asking more awkward questions about all of this content information that you've got hold of. Um, Start thinking about thinking itself. Why do you accept certain things the way they are? And maybe think about the ways in which you've been given huge amount of information, even the information you're getting at university, and start to wonder, why do people accept that information the way that it is? A good example of that has just come up very recently. So this is, if you're watching this in some point in the future from when it's published, think about this one. We have for the last 3 decades, and if you're a psychology student, you'll be interested in this. We have for the last 3 decades assumed that lower levels of serotonin were a major factor, a contributing factor to instances of depression. It turns out that's not the case. We're sort of back to square one, and this has now been admitted by a number of significant uh, scholars in the field. A research paper came out demonstrating that this is actually not the case at all. So there we have knowledge that was pretty much set in stone and assumed to be true. And it turns out that although antidepressants, which try and rectify that specific problem, do still seem to have a positive impact on people who suffer from depression, it's not for the reasons that we think that they do. Okay? Um, and for that reason, you must be more inquisitive and inquiring about your content, about your material. Um, and above all, the thing to take away from this is you must adopt a training mindset. See all of your term papers and your exams as an opportunity for you to develop your training, to develop your skills. Okay? I'm going to pick up much more of these now over the next few weeks. I know there's been a little bit of a gap with these, so we're going to pick up a few more, and we're going to start looking a little bit more deeply about how to, in other ways, improve and train your mindset. I'll see you then.